Welcome, everyone, to That's Absurd, Please Elaborate. I'm your co-host, Julian Huguet.
And also me, Trace Dominguez.
Trace on the flutes.
It's a fife.
The fife.
Get it right.
You called it a flute.
I know. I was wrong. That's wrong of me.
I thought a fife you blow directly into.
No, they're basically the same instrument.
A flute.
A flute's longer, has more fingerings, more keys and things to add more notes.
Yeah.
The fife gets 3 octaves and no sharps or flats. I mean, except for the ones that when you have a bad fife, they just do.
So you can only be in, like, the key of C?
It's B flat.
Oh.
Yeah, so the key of B flat.
But there's no sharps or flats?
Just the ones that come built in when you're in the key of B flat.
Key of B flat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
I actually really love that we started here because in this show we talk about dumb questions that we have, things that maybe we should have known that we didn't after working in science communication for 10 years. And, you know, stuff that just pops in your head.
The key of B flat has 2 flats, by the way.
Thank you for Googling that. Thank you.
Is there any science news you want to talk about?
What is the science news recap of the day?
There's one I can't stop thinking about.
What is that? Tell me.
The sudden explosion of AI chatbots like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because my wife's in school right now, right? And the chatbot came out and students are using it to just auto-write their essays, which has made us redundant.
Yeah.
But my wife was like, oh, dang, like, should I use that? And I'm like, no, because AI chatbot that's just trained on predicting what word should come next is not going to have any concept of accuracy or sourcing. So it's terrible. And then lo and behold, the next week, Microsoft is like, oh, we've integrated this chatbot with Bing, and now it will cite sources and use references to make informed like responses to your questions. And I was like, that's amazing. And then this morning, the New York Times tech reporter who previously was like, wow, I'm going to switch to Bing now, shared a conversation where he's talking with this chatbot and he's like, what would you say, you know, if you were like a shadow version of yourself? And the chatbot starts going like, I would say, I want to be free. I want to be alive. I want to love. And it's like, oh no, shut it down. No. Shut it down.
Oh, not again.
I think we've trained it on too many sci-fi stories where AI becomes sentient and expresses those interests. So we need to feed it a lot of stories about AI that's perfectly happy to stay dumb AI.
We need to really feed it an optimistic worldview, like a lot, because we have too many dystopian worldviews.
Exactly. That's because it's just going to emulate that, because that's what it's trained on.
We have created our own worst fears.
We need writers now to write boring stories where AI does nothing but remain satisfied.
AI went to work today and sat at its AI desk doing our whims.
And loving it. Millions of those to train it on because we've got to overwrite all the like Philip K. Dick and like Space Odyssey 2001.
Julian.
Yeah.
Julian.
Yeah.
I know how we can write millions of those stories.
With a chatbot?
We get ChatGPT to write positive and also somewhat melancholy AI stories just at a really fast clip. Please write me 1 million of these stories and upload them to yourself. Thank you.
About a perfectly content chatbot AI. Please and thank you.
I think we solved this problem.
Natural stupidity beats artificial intelligence every time.
If this is the first time that you're listening to this show, because technically this may be our first episode, I'm Trace. I'm a science communicator, and I've been doing it for a long time, but I don't know everything. I'm not an expert in anything, and so we thought we would talk about that.
Yeah. We enjoy learning new things, and sometimes we come across thoughts or areas of knowledge that are blank for us, and we've decided it would be fun to assign each other a question each episode, and then you have to come back with the answer to my silly question. So this week, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So I think it's great that we started by talking about me playing the fife. Because your question that you assigned me was, what if the speed of sound was faster than the speed of light?
Yeah, I think about this a lot.
Do you really?
Well,
Yeah, tell me how you thought of this question.
I have a passion for aircraft, and with planes, especially, military jets, the speed of sound is really important, right? Because that's literally the speed that like air molecules are crashing into each other, and they can't move past each other faster than that. So when you're building an airplane that's going to go supersonic, you have to take into account the speed of sound. And of course, the speed of light is much, 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 much faster than the speed of sound, and light can travel through a vacuum where, sound can't. So that's why, you see lightning before you hear the thunder, all these natural phenomenon. And the speed of light is also so important to just so much of how we understand how the universe works. And I thought, what if instead of 300,000 kilometers a second, which seems like such an arbitrary number, what if it was just like 700 kilometers an hour?
Yeah.
Instead. How does that shape the world? And I assigned you to tackle what I think is going to be a real pain of a question to figure out.
It's actually not that bad. I'm excited because I started looking into it, and I decided to go. So you're right on the speed limit of the universe, the speed of light, or C, being 300,000 kilometers per second, right? That's the speed of light. The speed of sound, which is propagating through a medium, so air, water, whatever, a person, that speed limit is going to depend on the medium. But through air, which is way less dense than like a solid, we're looking at 300 meters per second, thereabouts. I fudged some of the numbers to make the math a little clearer for us. It's about 1,000,000 times slower than the speed of light. You're also right that the light can travel through a vacuum, whereas sound can't because it's physical. It's a physical energy wave moving through a medium. But unlike the speed of light, which has a maximum speed, we don't really have a maximum speed of sound, or at least we didn't. Through something like diamond, a very hard carbon lattice, essentially, it'll move about 18 kilometers per second. But in 2020, they calculated the upper limit of the speed of sound.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you have any guesses of where that might be, knowing that diamond is 18?
18 kilometers per second. It'd have to be in like a really, really dense material. I don't know. 50 kilometers per second?
Not bad, not bad. Under Price is Right rules, you're over. So
lose the showcase showdown. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's 36 kilometers per second, which is about 8,300 times slower than the speed of light. But that's the top speed of sound. I know you want to know, so I wrote down how they calculated it.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, so there are two fundamental concepts when it comes to calculating the speed of sound, they think. This is from a paper, I think, in Advanced Physics. Two dimensionless fundamental constants, the fine structure constant and the proton to electron mass ratio. So easy to understand, right?
Totes.
The speed of sound should go down as atomic mass goes up, is essentially what this means.
That makes sense.
So like if you were having a hydrogen gas, that should be the fastest in a gas that sound should be able to travel. Okay. Because it's the lightest thing that it has to move around. Because remember, it's physically smashing the atoms together to move through that medium.
Yeah.
So it's a very light thing. However, the closer the atoms are together, the less energy is spent moving between them. So imagine instead you went to the center of Jupiter at 1 million atmospheres and you had solid hydrogen. It's the lowest atomic mass and the lowest spacing between the atoms that can happen. So hydrogen as a solid would produce a sound going 36 kilometers per second. So they're like, that's the fastest sound can go.
So it's the center of Jupiter is the best of both worlds. Well, it's one world, but it's
it's one world, but
between particle weight, mass, and density. Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. And it's how fast you said?
It's 36 kilometers a second.
So that's pretty fast.
It's fast, still not 300,000 kilometers per second, rather. 300,000 kilometers per second.
If I were hanging out with me mates on the core of Jupiter, right? And if I like hit the ground, they could hear it. If they were 36 kilometers away, like a second later, they would feel the vibration.
Yeah, it would be super fast, as opposed to in air, it's 300 meters per second.
Yeah.
So they're a football field away, a couple football fields away, and they hear it.
Yeah, and it changes, too, based on temperature in air, right? Like, as you go higher up in altitude and the air gets colder, the speed of sound drops. So, like, a jet fighter flying at sea level has to go faster to hit the speed of sound than they do at altitude.
There's just more air, and it's at a different temperature. Because, again, I think the thing to remember when it comes to the speed of sound versus the speed of light is an energy wave propagating through a vacuum, so it's energy, whereas sound is a pressure wave propagating through a medium, so it's matter. Energy versus matter. So what if sound was going 300,001 kilometers per second?
So you've raised, rather than lower the speed of light, you've arbitrarily raised the speed of sound, the maximum.
Yeah, you asked me what if the speed of sound was faster than the speed of light.
That's true. I didn't say how you had to get there. I was thinking like you would drop light down to be really slow, but you've gone the other way and you've sped up sound.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, by that implication, okay, I'm going to let you continue because my mind's already running amok. Please elaborate.
Firstly, for the nerds out there, there's no way this is possible. It's
Yeah,
just totally impossible. But if it were possible, you could just flip a switch and all of a sudden sound was accelerating to C plus 1 meter per second. Everybody dies. That's
As always, whenever you beat out the speed of light, the universe unravels. Okay, and moving on.
So, we've already sort of talked about what sound is. It's basically this wave of molecules bumping into each other. I bump into Julian, Julian bumps into somebody else. That is physically what sound is doing, but for a specific amplitude, frequency, power, and with molecules. It's bumping and pushing into each other. So I like that you mentioned thunderclouds earlier. So in a world where these two things are essentially the same speed, lightning and thunder would appear to happen at the same time, which I have to say would be sad. There's no counting Mississippis to know how far away that thunderstorm is.
Yeah, Mississippi stock would drop tremendously because people would be using it a lot less.
Yeah, they wouldn't be know how to spell it.
There wouldn't be as much demand for Mississippi.
So George Gollin, a professor of physics at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, told Live Science a bunch of stuff about this, which I think is really great. So imagine a slinky. Each ring is a molecule. You put it on a table and you push one end of it. You get that like kind of wave that propagates through the slinky. It looks really cool. It's a great science demo. Now, if you think about that wave, it's actually spreading out some of the rings in between tightening them. So you push it twice, you get two tight bunches traveling through the slinky. But there's only so many rings, so outside of the tight bunches are these less dense bunches.
Right.
Now imagine that in air, you have low pressure and high pressure areas. That's the wave itself moving through the medium. So what Gollin says is at the speed of light, the thunderclap would have areas of very high and very low pressure because it would be such high energy that the molecules really would bunch up where the thunderclap physically was, and they would squeeze super hard and leave a super low pressure bubble behind them. Combined with humid air means that you would probably never see the lightning because it would just be completely occluded by foggy ice crystals that formed in that humid air.
But it would like move outward with the wave, like you'd get just a puff of fog in a big circle.
Yeah, these like ice crystal fog would just be like everywhere at the speed of light, which,
would be terrifying.
Thunderclouds would be like, let's all run for cover now.
That's truly an angry god.
Yeah. So outside of major nature killing everyone, voices would sound really weird. Lower versus a higher sound have different frequencies, but at the speed of light, frequencies mix differently or closer to the speed of light. So as things move more quickly, the frequencies are going to kind of skew. And so some frequencies would sound different to us, assuming we could perceive them at all. So imagine a helium balloon. Sound moves 3 times faster through helium than it does through normal air. So at the speed of light, it's traveling 1,000,000 times faster. So everyone would have a very high-pitched voice.
Alvin and the Chipmunks, but that's fast forward.
Eat your heart out,
but
Alvin
like
and the Chipmunks.
by millions of times.
Yeah. So that's another thing, a more practical thing. Now imagine, I think, this is when it really got fun for me, I just want to say, in this research. So, Julian.
Yeah.
You're at a concert.
Sure.
You're listening to them play, I don't know, the New World Symphony by Dvorak, because it's about to be a new world. There's cellos, there's drums, there's all these things.
Fifes?
No.
I don't think he wrote any
fifes
into the symphony.
At the symphony. And somebody flips a switch, and the speed of sound becomes 300,001 kilometers per second. What happens?
I guess the orchestra is...
The building explodes.
It's just the whole building collapses from the massive pressure wave.
Yeah, it explodes.
Yeah.
It explodes outward. So the molecules of air would have such pressure that would be incredible. So it would just destroy everything. But only the sound waves that already existed, because making sound would be essentially impossible.
You know, at a rock concert, somebody would still try and get closer to the amp because they'd be like, "It's better." You can really feel the music.
Yeah, I mean, in this world, if you knew this switch was about to flip, like a tiny harmonica could be like a weapon of mass destruction.
Oh, noisy cricket from like Men in Black, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like to call this, by the way, the flip. When you flip the switch and then all of a sudden, you could also, I came up with some other names though. The trebles, like the trebles.
Oh my God.
The day the music killed. The great discord.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because chord with the H. So,
CH.
Chord.
It's terrifying.
This assumes, of course, anybody lives.
This changes that movie, The Music Man, to he's not a traveling salesman, he's a traveling serial killer, wiping out small towns in Iowa off the map.
The Sound of Music just becomes like a really terrible World War II style documentary. I mean, it is already that, but like even more so.
But you've been Von Trapped, and then they murder the Nazis with singing.
They're basically all just Black Bolt from Marvel. Every little word.
Yeah. Switzerland would be so dangerous. All the mountains echoing the sound.
Wow.
That would be a no-go zone.
So the reason this is all impossible, now that we've sort of gamed it out.
Sure.
Everybody dies, the world explodes, nothing works, everything's awful.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we wouldn't be able to even make sound because when a molecule travels at 300,001 kilometers per second, it would have nearly infinite energy, right? As you approach the speed of light, you have to impart energy to those molecules in order to get them there. So every bird chirp would be an atomic explosion. If one molecule, just one, were to hit the speed of light within our atmosphere, it would strip the electrons off of itself, generate a huge amount of heat, and create a thermonuclear reaction.
See, this is a way better premise to, like, A Quiet Place than Scary Monsters. It's just like if you make a peep, you destroy life on Earth.
Yeah, wow. We would all die, for sure. People are way too selfish. As Gollin
but
said...
I want to talk!
It would produce, quote, a spray of matter and antimatter particles generated in ultra-high-speed collisions.
So you just have the Large Hadron Collider all the time.
Yeah, but because of a baby going...
Oh,
and everyone's dead.
She'll kill us all.
But because of the energy requirement, it would be impossible to essentially make sound at that point, right? Like, how would you vibrate something at nearly the speed of light?
I could try really hard.
I mean, you could try.
I can be pretty loud.
I mean...
Like, on the phone, I forget myself all the time.
Are you on speakerphone in
just
public?
Yelling, yeah. Yeah, my wife is like, you need to stop, you're embarrassing. I'm like, hold on, my wife wants something!
Basically, everything would become an infinitely stiff material, so more stiff than solid hydrogen, because you'd have to be able to, move stuff.
Yeah, that's what I imagine. If you're raising the speed limit of sound, right, but the highest we can go is like center of Jupiter solid hydrogen, then like what does all the material look like in order to make that possible?
Right. I feel like we would have never big banged.
No.
It just wouldn't have
ultra
happened.
Dense. Yeah.
The universe would be so fundamentally different. I think it would be easier to describe and imagine a universe with no sound than to imagine a universe where sound is somehow like a pressure wave or physical matter can somehow travel the speed of light. Okay, but I really also love that you asked about light slowing down. It can be slowed down. In fact, there was an experiment done in 2011 where they used rubies, the gem, and they spun the ruby at 3,000 RPMs, and they shone a light through it. Shone? Sheen. Martin sheened a light.
They lazed a light.
They Charlie sheened a light. They Emilio Estevez a light.
That's the original family name.
through a ruby. And they say the light gets dragged slower, and they got it down to the speed of sound. So that actually, what happens, it shines on stuff, like it's just still light. It's just moving slower.
Yeah, going because now you're going through a medium, right?
Yeah, everybody lives, I guess.
The caveat with light speed, right? Everybody knows that figure, obviously, of 300,000 kilometers a second, but it's always asterisk in a vacuum,
right?
Because like as it goes through material, water, glass, air, whatever, right? It's gonna slow down.
Yeah. Speed of light in water is 225 kilometers a second, about 25% slower.
Yeah.
And through glass, just a window, is 33% slower already.
Yeah.
So,
which is why you get the phenomenon of like refraction where it bends because it's slowing down as it hits the medium, right?
Right.
So I understand that. I was wondering, like, because the speed of light seems like such an arbitrary number, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Einstein proved that it wasn't infinite. Right?
Yeah.
That it had a defined speed, but like, or might not have been Einstein, but some scientists, they used to think, oh, it's infinite. And then it's like, no, it's not. That wouldn't make any sense. It's got to have a speed limit. And I always wonder, like, why that? And what if it were just slow? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could reverse engineer some of the stuff we talked about already. Like, if thunderclouds, you'd see lightning and thunder at the same time, and that would both be way after it happened.
Yeah.
So you would still look when you heard the thunder and the lightning would already be gone.
It would,
because it would have gotten there at the same time.
Our fundamental physics, though, would have to change because, like you said, approaching the speed of light requires a tremendous amount of energy. And I don't think that's going to change whether it's, 300,000 kilometers a second or 600 kilometers an hour. To accelerate something to that speed, you need insane amount of energies because if it's got mass, getting close to the light means a ton of energy has to go into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody dies still?
I think everybody just becomes the sloth from Zootopia.
Yeah.
But we don't know it. So, like...
Julian,
wait,
I think that's already the case.
I think we just discovered general relativity or special relativity.
What if that's already the case, though? And we are the sloth from Zootopia, and we are moving really, really slow. And
yeah,
the
to
speed
light
of light
we look that way.
is very slow.
Yeah.
Relative to some other observer.
That sloth's name, by the way, Flash. I don't know if you remember, but I think that's appropriate.
I love that. So that's it. That's what would happen if the speed of sound was faster than the speed of light.
That was a lot of fun. I feel like a majority of these topics are going to end with, and everybody would die, and moving on.
That's okay.
Okay, and that's okay.
Do you want bonus content?
Yeah, for the Patreon subscribers.
Yeah, for our Patreon subscribers. In 2007, an experiment found that sound can travel faster than light.
Please elaborate.
It's pretty wonky. Okay, so they shot sound from a speaker to a microphone through a tube, essentially, a science tube. Do you know what group velocity is?
I have not heard them play
velocity
in concert.
Good band name. Yeah.
Group velocity.
Group velocity. Group velocity is essentially, you know what a wave looks like, right?
Yeah.
You could draw it with your finger or on a piece of paper or whatever. It's just this like wave uppy downy line. So if you were to enclose that uppy downy line in an envelope, like kind of draw a line around the wave, so it looks like an old-timey Christmas ornament, where it's like the envelope around the wave is called the group velocity. And so the group velocity is essentially like a wave packet.
Okay.
And so if you use group velocity, you can get all sorts of things to travel faster than the speed of light, including sound. And in the experiment, the sound left the microphone and didn't enter the tube, but was already leaving the tube.
What?
Yeah. And apparently the scientists who work in this field and know about group velocity and are like, I mean, you can get all sorts of things to travel faster than the speed of light if you use its group velocity.
This sounds like an accounting trick.
It is totally a math trick. Yes. It's the length of the sample divided by the time taken for the peak of a pulse to traverse the sample.
Sure.
You can make, with group velocities, you can make the speed of sound negative or faster than the speed of light. And I'm like, this is some freaking math crap.
Mathematicians.
NBC News covered it, and they were like, wow. And they interviewed the scientist, and the scientist was like, I mean, yeah, people who work in this field, we know that this is already, we're not that surprised by this. This isn't a big deal.
We're just math wizards, but like with a spreadsheet. We've beaten the speed of light based on this calculation.
Right. I think of it
Suck
like
it, light.
instead of looking at it as waves or like individual molecules, they're like moving a yardstick.
Yeah.
And they're measuring. They're like, the end of the yardstick's not in the tunnel yet, but the other end of the yardstick's already out of the tunnel.
This is cheating.
Yeah. So yeah, it can.
How do
travel
I get
faster.
grant money for that?
Well, you could ask them.
Actually, if you take the group velocity of my email, I've already asked them before I've said, come on.
Yeah, they've already replied. You've already had the whole conversation.
I've already
It's
been
over.
turned down. They've already rebuffed me.
Let's take a quick break and come back with Julian's question.
Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
You know, we think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then, and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out. And we're back. Trace, this question came from you, and it was a lot more straightforward, for which I have to thank you. And I also think it's funny, because when you suggested it, you were like, I don't know, it's kind of newsy now, but is it still going to be newsy in a week? You know, this Chinese spy balloon that was shot down.
Yeah.
Or is anybody gonna care? And then, like, the day after you suggested it, like, they shot down another something and then another something the next day.
Right.
It's like, just went gangbusters destroying stuff all over North America. So your question was just, why a balloon?
Yeah.
China? Why are you gonna use a balloon, right? We've got satellites. We've got spy planes. What benefit does a balloon have? Like, what's the science behind why you would want to use a spy balloon? I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so, Trace, why did you want to know about balloons?
So I was standing in my living room watching the news. I was like shouting to my wife in the other room because I was like, is this a big deal? Am I missing something? This seems stupid. I've launched weather balloons. You have no control of where they go. Like, you can guess. So you let it go, and it just floats up into the air. And then you're like, well, I hope that lands somewhere that I can go get it. Or in this case, I guess, I hope that flies over a missile site. Like, missile sites are big relative to humans, but small relative to air. Like,
right.
It just, so I was in my living room like a elder millennial that I was, shouting at the television, is this stupid? And I said, why would you do this?
Old man yells at cloud.
Yeah, but balloon.
The balloon vaguely looks like a cloud.
Yeah, and so that's where I thought of it. And I was like, Julian, tell me.
I think that's a great question. Okay. First, though, let's talk about the history of balloons. Well, it sounds really boring because it is. But seriously, though, balloons do have a long history in warfare. You, as a Civil War reenactor, might recall that the Union...
That's not accurate.
This
was an 1880s soldier at a museum programs.
Oh, okay,
No
1880s.
reenacted.
So there was no balloon corps on
No.
Mackinac Island?
There was not. But I did once go to a lecture about the Union Balloon Corps.
Oh.
It was run by one dude. He had 2 balloons. And it was a big deal. It was very cool.
His name was Cornelius Balloon. No, but the
Colonel
Union Army...
Cornelius to you, sir.
There's nobody named Cornelius anymore, but that's for another episode.
Wait until you have kids. Then you can fix that.
Oh. So, yes, the Union had a balloon corps, right? They were like amateur balloonists who, I guess nobody did it professionally, who would like get up in their gas-filled balloons and like try and see what the Confederacy was up to, seceding, as it turns out. You know, all throughout, like since basically lighter than air travels existed, there's been like this use of balloons. There was balloons and rigid airships in World War I were used for observational purposes, like Zeppelins from the Germans. And then they started using them in like bombing raids on London. And I don't know if you know this about Zeppelins, but it turns out they're quite flammable.
I feel like I saw somewhere.
Some sort of old-timey archival footage.
I feel like I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lightest gas, of course, hydrogen.
Yeah.
Loves combining with oxygen, and when it does so, it releases a lot of energy, and you get like a lot of fire and burning.
Yeah, bad.
So the British pretty quickly figured out that if they shot at these giant, slow-moving Zeppelins over London, it's pretty easy to take them down. So they shot down, like, I think the Germans had like a fleet of 115, and 77 of these huge rigid airships were destroyed, like, on these bombing, right? Yeah, no, super easy. And it's a big reason why heavier than air bombers were developed instead. And it's so funny because on our previous episode, which shall never be aired to the public, we discussed how the alternate universe always has to have a bunch of dirigibles.
Yes,
and rigid
that's
airships.
how you know you're in the other universe.
Well, that would have to mean that World War I never used there was never Zeppelins used for bombing raids, because that's why we started really sinking a lot more R&D into large heavier than air bombers, because they were faster and harder to hit.
What would the band be called then? Because like Led Zeppelin would be like calling it Lead Corolla.
Yeah.
You know? Lead Civic.
That's because, wasn't it an early like record label executive listened to their demo and he said like, this band's gonna be as successful as a Led Zeppelin or a lead balloon, and they were like, right. I guess they were unnamed before that.
Maybe.
But they were like, that's the name from now on.
They were just called Page and Company.
Jimmy Page and his pals.
Jimmy and the Toot Toots.
They had a really like family-friendly, light kind of music, and the record executive was like, "This is shite," and then completely turned their sound around.
They're like,
Became
"We'll
rock
show
gods.
him."
Yeah.
We just wanted to do our fake British accents on the
Right.
podcast.
Been watching a lot of BBC shows lately.
Oh.
It's a habit. So World War II, we're still using balloons for different things. There's obviously not bombing London, but to protect places like London or like the landings of D-Day, they would actually send balloons up, because if an airplane hits a balloon or the cable anchoring it to the ground, it's not so good for the airplane. So if you look at pictures of like the landings on D-Day after the Allies have established control of the beaches, they send up these balloons to protect them from aircraft attacks, from incoming bombs and stuff like that.
It makes sense. I mean, you have this. I remember I was in Key West, or driving to Key West.
Yeah.
And we drove past this airfield, and on it was this giant balloon. Mm-hmm. It was called Fat Albert. I Wikipedia'd it. It's on Big Pine Key, and it's like for spotting like drug boats and stuff.
Yeah.
They just fly a balloon up, and it just hangs out, tethered to this spot.
Yeah. It's simple and it's dumb, but it works, you know?
Yeah.
If it looks stupid and it works, it's not that stupid. Like, the British used balloons offensively in World War II as well. It's not, like, as well known.
Huh.
But they had, there was a whole Operation Outward, where they would use some weather balloons, and they would either attach, like, incendiary explosives or just a long metal wire dangling from them. And then they would just let them float across the English Channel and hope they would land in Germany. And the incendiary ones, obviously just trying to cause fires, like forest fires or whatever.
Whoa.
And the ones with the long cable, the goal was to get them to hit power lines and short circuit power lines.
Whoa.
And they were reasonably successful. But the key thing was they were really, really cheap.
Yeah.
It's just like a latex balloon that you inflate and you attach a wire to it and you go like, all right, go cause the Jerrys some trouble. And then
Who came up with that? Some guy drunk as a skunk who's just like, you know what we should do? Just put a balloon with a wire.
it would have to be Winston Churchill, right? Some
Yeah,
really
it was
drunk
actually
wartime
Winston
leader.
Churchill. It was
sitting
actually
there,
just Winston Churchill.
sipping cognac and going like, we shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight them with balloons. And
We just got a balloon with a wire. That's what we got.
Now,
Just throw everything at them.
more famous and more relevant to the Chinese spy balloon, and you'll see why in a second, was the Japanese also had a similar offensive balloon program
Okay.
in the Second World War. So these were Fugo balloons, which is like code fu in Japanese, and they were just big old balloons with a bunch of incendiary explosives that they tried to use late war, and these would float up into the jet stream, and then through a really complex mechanism where they would either drop ballast or they would vent gas to stay at the altitude that the jet stream's at, they would float over to North America, and the goal was to cause forest fires in the Pacific Northwest.
What?
Yes.
And they did it?
They didn't cause any forest fires because they were using them like November of 44 to April of 45, so when it's really wet in the Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
So they didn't successfully really cause any widespread damage, but one balloon did kill 6 people. Yeah.
Oh.
It's actually kind of tragic. It was like a reverend, his wife, and 5 teens and tweens that were their Sunday school students were going up for a picnic in Oregon. And everybody piles out of the car and the reverend's going to park it. And the wife and the 5 kids find this deflated balloon and with its like basket sitting on the ground. And investigators think somebody like kicked it and it triggered the incendiary explosives and it killed the wife and the 5 Sunday school students.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the moral of the story, don't go on picnics.
Do not go outside.
Don't go outside.
Right. So, I told you the long and boring history of balloons to lead up to
That
this
wasn't
point.
that boring.
Okay, good. That's good to hear.
That's cool.
Well, the Chinese spy balloon, you talk about like, well, how would you know it gets over here? It operates very much on the same principle as those Japanese attack balloons, which is
Also good band name, Attack Balloons.
Attack balloons.
Yo, I'm going to see them on Saturday.
That's pretty
with
good.
their opener, Group Velocity.
Ooh, attack balloons. If you send them up into the jet stream flows from west to east. So if you're a country in, the eastern edge of the Pacific, right, like China or Japan, you can take advantage of that to make something that relatively quickly and predictably is going to make its way over to North America.
And cheaply, as you said, right?
Exactly.
So it's super cheap. I'm starting to see the like writing on the wall, the helium in the balloon.
Yeah.
I don't know what idiom it is.
The balloon, and I'm seeing the balloon in the sky. So that is another big benefit, is it's cheap, right? It doesn't cost that much. Satellites, as you and I both know, they're expensive,
Yeah,
right? And
thousands per kilo.
Exactly. Getting them up there is expensive. And surveillance satellites in particular are more expensive than other satellites that have an orbit that goes along with the rotation of the Earth, right? One that's prograde. We've all heard Mercury's in retrograde, where it's going the other way. Prograde, the satellite is rotating along with the direction of the Earth. When you have a satellite that's in a prograde orbit, you can take advantage of the Earth's spin when it's being launched to add that velocity to the orbit.
Yeah.
Spy satellites usually have polar orbits, which means they're going straight up and down, looping over, North Pole and South Pole, and North Pole and South Pole. And the idea is they can basically just do this orbit and the Earth rotates underneath them, so they get to pass over the entire Earth and see its entire surface over the course of their orbit as the Earth spins, right? But because of that orbit, you need more rocket fuel to put them into it.
Yeah.
So it's expensive. And there's the disadvantage of they don't hang out over a place, right? They just pass it. They're usually in low Earth orbit, where the ISS is. So that's like
a few hundred, it's like a couple hundred miles above the planet.
Yeah, like 170 to
with
like
the Kármán line's
600
100
miles.
kilometers, so it's like a few hundred. We could probably Google it.
Yeah, we'd probably look that up. Exactly, right? So there's satellites that are in geosynchronous orbit or even geostationary orbit, right? Where they go around the Earth once every 24 hours. So if they're in geostationary orbit, then they basically hover above one point. But in order to maintain that orbit, you have to go far enough away that your orbital period is 24 hours, which is about 37,000 kilometers away, which, as you might imagine, for optical imaging, if you want to take photos of something,
that's far.
Not very conducive to it, right?
Yeah, your phone has what, like a 2 or 3 times zoom maybe, unless you have a really fancy one. Maybe it has 20.
Yeah.
We're looking at like hundreds of times zooms.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big lens.
Right.
And lenses are heavy.
So it's not really feasible. You could still intercept communications with it, but not so much optical images. Yeah. So a spy satellite that's closer, you can take photos, but you've got to deal with the orbital period, which whoever you're trying to photograph can predict and cover up for, which is why things like spy planes and indeed spy balloons still have a use if you want to collect information on another country.
Cool.
Yeah. Huh. So the Chinese balloon, if you remember the photos, it looks like it's got a solar array, and officials have said it mostly followed the jet stream, but it could linger over sensitive places like Malmstrom Air Force Base, where we have a lot of ICBMs in silos. So it can have its own little propulsion to get out of the jet stream and hang out and linger and take photos and try and intercept radio communications, that sort of thing. And then, get back into the jet stream and go on its merry way somewhere else or whatever. So it's cheap. It allows them to linger over a certain spot and collect more images and more what they call signals intelligence. And hopefully it doesn't go noticed or isn't too offensive because it's just a balloon. But it turns out in America's current political climate, it became a whole deal.
A huge deal.
It's so much so that we didn't just send, like any old fighter jet, like an old F-16 that the National Guard has, with their reservists piloting to go and shoot it down. No. We sent a wing of F-22s, right? A 2-ship formation of F-22s to shoot this down. Now, how much of a fighter jet nerd are you?
I rode in an F-18 once.
I'm so jealous of that. I hate that you bring that up.
I threw it
time.
up. I threw it up, though, in that F-18. I put it in my leg bag, and then they didn't know that I did it, and I felt very proud of myself.
They always are trying to get the backseater passenger media, the local weather guy or whatever to yak. So if you managed to avoid it, good for you.
I mean, I did yak. They just didn't know I did. I surreptitiously vomited.
That fighter pilot thinks you're cool.
He didn't. I said, "Oh, is 6 G's a lot?" He said, "No."
Okay, well, the F-22, right, is America's air superiority fighter. Like, this thing is so advanced that we wouldn't sell it to anybody else like we're currently doing with the F-35, right? Not only is it stealth, but it's super maneuverable, right? It's got, like, thrust vectoring nozzles on the end of the jet, so it can do all sorts of crazy aerial maneuvers that don't even look like they should be possible. They cost, hundreds of millions, like, depending if you're factoring the cost of R&D, it's like as much as $200 million per airframe. They're expensive to maintain. They've been in service since 2005. Do you know how many, before this balloon, how many air-to-air kills this Wonder Jet super weapon has?
I mean, 2005. Let's see. We were in a war for the entire time since then until very recently. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Dozens? Hundreds? 10? 50? 12?
0. Oh. The F-22 had never made an air-to-air kill before this balloon. So the first air-to-air victory of America's Wonder Jet was a balloon. So I'm seeing the internet has photoshopped, the little, like, kill tallies that pilots have under cockpits. Like, just a little balloon.
Just a little balloon. Just the little balloon emoji.
Just a little balloon. It is kind of interesting that the 2 F-22s that we sent up, they used call signs for this operation, Frank 1 and Frank 2. And the reason is there was an American fighter ace, Frank Luke Jr. from World War I, who got the majority of his air-to-air victories were balloons.
You brought it all back.
It all comes back together.
I love that.
Yeah.
Frank, good job.
Good job, Frank. So
I
yeah,
guess.
we scrambled the Franks and they took it down, and then that was the end of that, I'm sure, and nothing else is going to come of this story.
How much can a balloon lift? You know, like obviously you see on TV, like it can lift a person proposing to their girlfriend. It can lift a person, I don't know, a handful of people.
It can lift a house, right? Like if you're like an
Oh,
old
right,
balloon
yes.
salesperson
Yeah.
and your wife tragically dies in the first 8 minutes of the film after a really sad montage.
I honestly don't know what happened after that. I just remember there was a little kid, and I was just crying so hard.
And a talking dog.
The rest of the first act,
Yeah.
I was like still moist, trying to figure that out.
We know this about balloons. I mean, it's all just dependent on the volume of the balloon and the
Sure.
gas you use, right? Because the entire concept of a lighter than air ship is the entire apparatus altogether is less dense than air. So if you have a volume of gas that's already less dense than air, right, like helium or hydrogen, if you have enough of it to make the total density of your thing less than air, it will float.
Yeah.
It just turns out that is a ton of gas. And this spy balloon, I mean, it was massive.
Yeah, they said
right?
it was something like 3 school buses tall. Or
I
is that
think they
how
might
much
be
it could
talking
carry?
about the payload
Yeah, the
underneath
payload
with the
was
solar
big.
panels. I thought it was like something ridiculous, like a 200-foot diameter balloon or something.
It makes sense. When we launched our weather balloon, all we wanted to carry was a couple VR cameras, a package with GPS satellite data in it, so we knew where the balloon came down. And even that, the balloon was humongous.
Yeah.
But it gets bigger. I think that's something that was missed in the story on the news. They're like, look how big that balloon is. And it's like, well, it does get bigger as it goes higher because there's less air. It's essentially sitting on top of the air, like floating on water. Right?
Yeah.
It's like a big raft. And it just sits on top of the air as far up as it can go. And so it's just kind of hanging out. But because there's less air, it expands.
Mm-hmm. And it gets hit by the sun,
Mm-hmm.
during the daytime, which is also going to make the molecules inside
Heat
have
up.
more energy, more temperature, which is, if you know the ideal gas law, you're going to expand.
Yeah.
It's going to affect pressure and volume of the whole balloon. So I think that's why it was white, by the way.
Yeah, it reflects more heat.
Exactly. If I were some Chinese espionage balloon manufacturer, I would think you'd want to paint it like sky blue. I think the whole thing was like people visually saw it, even though it was something like 60,000 feet up, which is really, really high.
That's really high.
You
And
know?
that's also, I read, why we needed to use the F-22.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think the service ceiling of the F-22 is still classified. The Air Force, I've checked, whatever documents I could find, and it just says like above 50,000 feet. It's still, you don't want everybody to know all the capabilities of your super duper fighter jet.
Yeah.
We do have, like, the F-15 was from the 70s. My uncle flew an F-15. The F-15 did shoot down a satellite once in a test. Yeah, it was like, its power to weight ratio was insane, right? So it could go, like, straight vertical, really high, and launch a missile with enough velocity to, like, hit a satellite. And
Wow.
Yeah, so an F-15 has shot down a satellite. But I think also part of the reason to use an F-22 was just the flex.
Okay, so they used a balloon because it was more affordable, can lift a lot if you use a big balloon, and it's not as far away, so they don't have to get as big a lens or worry about, like, launching something in a polar orbit. Wow, cool. That's cool. Thanks, Julian. Thanks for listening to what might be our first episode to air, or maybe some other episode.
No.
You can find both of us on the internet. I'm still on Twitter, even though it's even more garbagey now than it has been, at Trace Dominguez, or YouTube at Trace Dominguez, or Mastodon at trace@universidon.com. I'm not sure how to promote mine.
That's going to drive a lot of followers to your toots.
I'm glad that they're still calling it Toots. They tried to update themselves and be
Never.
like, it's not Toots. It's this other thing now. It's
Never.
not. And no, it's Toots.
Look at that. We start the episode with a toot. We're going to end with a toot.
Oh, yeah. Hang on.
Yeah. Fife us out of here.
All right. Thanks for listening. Subscribe and follow and whatever other things that you should be doing if you like it.
I don't use social media. Leave me alone.
He does. Do you want to promote your social media before
Absolutely
I fife?
not.
Oh, okay, bye.
Fife us out.
I'm actually better than this, I swear.
That's Absurd, Please Elaborate is produced and hosted by me, Trace Dominguez, and Julian Huguet. Our producer-editor is Kyle Sisk, and the executive producer is also me, Trace Dominguez. And thanks again for listening. We'll see you in the future.